Thank you for watching the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and today I'm going back to Chile, and more specifically East Central Chile on the border with Argentina, which is, of course, where the Vicuña district is, because I'm getting an update from Alan Sabet and Stephen Nano, who are respectively the CEO and the technical advisor of Mogotes Metals. For all that, though, I would like to warn you that we have received monetary compensation for the production of this video from the company that's being interviewed. Please understand that this channel is a business that sells content producing services to companies, which means you cannot rely on this video for research, and you should treat this as an advertisement instead. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. Please only watch this if you know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business where failure is the norm. This is going to be a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature, containing forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, so before continuing on, please talk to an investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital may be at risk. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of those disclaimers that I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, Mogotes is, of course, a copper exploration company that's listed as MOG or MOG on the Venture Exchange in Canada, where an average of 280,000 shares trade daily. 52-week high, 21 cents, and a 52-week low of 10 cents. With a market cap of now about $32 million and about 236 million shares outstanding, today this is a 15.5-cent stock. 64 million warrants, just like last time, 6.3 million options, 1 million RSUs. You add those to the shares outstanding, you get to about 310 million fully diluted shares, but that might soon be changing because of what we'll be talking about today. And I'm not doing a full company overview because I've done 2 interviews with Mogotes already. They were pretty in-depth, and they are in a playlist on the channel, so you can go and watch them for an in-depth overview of the company. Because, gentlemen, I'm rushing to talk to you. Stephen, we'll get to the rocks in a couple of minutes here, but Alan, I want to kick it off with you because you've signed an option agreement for the acquisition of some more ground in the Vicuña district, which you believe is the southern projection of the Filo Del Sol trend. It is adjacent to Filo's property. And we'll go through everything hopefully today, but I want to start with the why, as in why go through this process? Why go through this potential dilution here, the delays to acquire more ground when you already had ground and you already had many targets that you told me you liked very much last time we spoke?
Yeah. Well, we think that this is probably one of the best places in the world to look for copper. We had a very prime land position. Just as you know, the belt runs north-south. And Stephen, we can get into the whole, geology of that. That would be great. You'll understand more there. But this was a key part of the puzzle. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. We had the southern projection, but just west of us in Chile, there was some more ground. And our Meseta target that just abuts into the southern end of Filo del Sol, which had great, we've got good numbers in the rocks with some very interesting geophysical anomalies. The other bit of that is sitting on this bit of ground that we've just acquired that was owned by a company called CMP. And so we've been working with them for a couple of years to come to terms. And you talked about why did we do this? Well, look, this company, this package that we've just acquired could be a company on its own. And we've managed to get it into Mogotes for what I believe to be very attractive terms. And I think anyone who reads those terms will agree as well. The majority of the money that is going to go into this is going to go into the ground. And so I think the percentage of the dilution versus what we're going to be receiving as the company and what we have exposure to, it's quite attractive. So, we're really, really happy with this. We're really happy to be working with one of the biggest iron ore producers in Chile, with CMP. They're a leading player in iron ore, and they've been mining in Chile for a long time. So another partner that's going to help us along our way, and that's very proficient in getting things done in Chile. So it's a lot of good things all at once, but primarily it's the quality of the targets, the location of the targets, and what we know about them already, that Stephen will walk you through. But they're really, really something special. And we hope to, we don't know what's there, but that's the process of exploration. So as far as what we can see now, this is a great win for us, and we're really pleased.
We'll get to that iron ore part too, but how or why was this deal even possible in the first place? I mean, why is the vendor letting go off of it if it's actually the home of the extension of the Filo del Sol?
I think that's a good question, but I also at some point you have to say maybe we are good at what we do. No, but so what I would say is that when we've the way we've explored and the proposition we put forward to CMP, which is our partners here, they could see substantial upside in partnering with the likes of us because a number of reasons. One is that we're aggressively focused on a single project. They're focused on a multi-commodity, majority iron ore, but large project portfolio, right? So this would fall in the category of non-core. And indeed, they had it for over 20, roughly 20 years and had done only surface sampling, very limited as well. Okay, so similar story to kind of the Mogotes project, but with the lack of drilling. Okay, so that's one. So it's non-core for them. But on the other hand, for us, it's our prime focus. We're able to put forward a very aggressive exploration plan that gives them a substantial upside because they're getting stuck in Mogotes. So if we make a discovery on either side of the border, on either of our land package, they're going to be the beneficiary of that. So it de-risks their land package, puts it in the hands of proficient explorers, and it gives them a carried interest in the case if we make a discovery, they'll be a contributing joint venture partner. And for them, that's also interesting because most of the companies you talk to when you talk to the gold majors or other companies, they're looking for a little bit of copper exposure as well, because that's what the capital markets are looking for. And so this gives them all of the things that they wanted. It also gives us the ability to go and explore. We've now got control over the land package. It's we're getting up to 80% here. And so that's win-win. We were able to put a compelling win-win proposition in front of them and work with them over the last actually 2 years to get to this point, to sign the deal and to go forward.
Well, so you're saying so you mentioned they're going to be your partner in this thing. So then I thought, oh, so kind of like my wife, but then you said you had control. And I was like, okay, so nothing like me and my wife.
Well, it's a standard exploration thing in that, you have the working person, which is the exploration company, and you got the kind of minority interest. So in the sense that there is a control party and there is a minority party. It depends where in the deal you are. So as we're earning in, control will shift from CMP owned to Mogotes owned as we meet our commitments, and then we'll be in the driver's seat, but then we'll still be partners.
What role are they going to play in the decision-making process, though? And let me tell you why I'm asking that is because they're an iron ore company, right? So what I'm thinking is how aligned are you with them, given that you're after copper, they want iron ore feed, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it's the discretion and the exploration plan, the focus, the operations, all in our hands.
100%?
So, and no, that would not be accurate legally to say, but basically while we're in the option period, we're controlling the exploration program, the budget, everything. It's completely at our discretion. So we can spend and explore. And the minute we don't like to explore or we don't want to spend, we don't have to. So that's how an option would typically work. So it's a typical option in that sense. We don't run our budget or our thinking or our targets or anything really through them. But as a courtesy, we'll obviously maintain good communication with them and update them on what's going on. And we have reporting requirements, but they're not, in the sense that we have to consult on our exploration program and decide together. It's not like that.
They do fund their share of the exploration cost pro-rata, right? I mean, they can't get away from under that, I think, or can they?
No, how it works is if we develop, for the first 5 years or earlier, if we decide, we're exploring and they're just there, okay? Similar to any other earning agreement. At the stage where we reach to 80-20, should we get there, that's when it'll become a contributing joint venture pro-rata, okay? And then if they don't contribute, they get diluted down. And if they hit it to, I think 10%, 10%, under 10%, their interest will convert to a 2% royalty stake.
Right. Okay. As far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, they do retain the rights to any potential iron ore under this agreement.
Yes.
Do you think that limits your pool of potential partners later down the road? Like if you want to JV someone for doing the PEA or the PFS or something like that, because they already have access to the iron ore, does that limit who you can partner the whole package with?
Stephen, you can speak to the iron ore content of these things, but basically the way these things are drafted, Antonio, is that unless they're economically recoverable quantities of iron ore, that right does not have any bearing on the project development. And so if the project is going to go forward, that right itself will be negotiated out in good faith, considering that it's not economic. So that's all
Okay.
considered in the agreement that we've put forward, and it won't affect the attractiveness of the project for any potential partners, in my opinion. And I think because of the way we drafted, that would be the case. But Stephen, I think iron ore content relatively limited from what we know, right?
Well, I'm sorry for interrupting. And Stephen, yes, I do want to get to that. We just
Sure.
one more question before we get into the rocks.
Sure.
Then we kind of switch over to Stephen, to you. But Alan, what is the addition to your total annual cost now that you also have to? I think the patent cost, you have to reimburse it, or how does that work? What does that add to your cost structure?
Yeah, roughly 1.5 Canadian that we're going to explore and pay, into this project. But a portion of those costs are kind of distributed out of our existing cost base. So where we've got our guys, our geologists, our team, and so on. So we direct some of that spend over to the new acquisition, or the new option rather. Right. So net change, probably.
The vast majority of that money, and the vast majority of that money is going into the ground, Alan. It's not payments.
Yeah. So that's that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that's not patents, like you're talking all in.
So no, the patentes is in the tens of thousands. I can't give you the exact number right now, but it would be like probably under 20, maybe 20 to 30. I gotta go check.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, Stephen, on to you then to walk me through the rocks, if you will. I understand this property is adjacent to Filo's property. What's the talk to me about the overall setting, lithologies, and what evidence supports the claim that this could actually be the extension of Filo del Sol?
Yeah. So, Antonio, cutting straight to the chase, because we had a long interview last time, I focused there on the middle Miocene belt that hosts Filo del Sol and Lunahuasi and Los Alados. This is such a key piece of ground, and literally the day that I joined Mogotes, I said to Alan, we have to get that piece of ground, because it's not that it adjoins Filo del Sol, it's the direct southern extension of that big alteration system that hosts the Filo del Sol deposit. So last time we spoke, the big north-south control of that middle Miocene belt, it's really critical. We're literally a kilometre from the last drill hole that Filo Corp announced in their news release, where they intersected 610 metres effectively from surface of 0.4% copper and 1.5% gold. So they're starting to systematically explore to the south towards our property boundary, and they're continuing to get large-scale intersections. And in fact, that intersection started 22 metres from surface, and is part of a northwest trending corridor of mineralization that's sitting there. So we're sitting right on that belt. The key thing for us is, again, in our last interview, we talked about the priority targets and the ones that we would like to explore. And two of the key targets were our Meseta target and our Cumbri target. And what we've been, I guess it's been clear in our announcements, but we've been a little cautious about saying too much about, is that we can clearly see that the geology not only extends from Filo del Sol into our project, but that the Meseta target and the Cumbri target are open into this ground. So we have outcropping geochemistry all around the ground that we've just acquired on the Argentine side, including some nice gold assays, extensive copper in soils extending into that area, gold in soils. We have, from our image processing, we can see the advanced argillic, so the quartz-alunite systems and the big structures extending straight down from Filo straight into that ground and adjoining onto our Meseta target. So our geology is open, our geochemistry is open, our geophysics at depth shows a very large geophysical signature there that we think could be a buried porphyry target sitting right in that corner. So we've really been after this ground, and as Alan's said a couple of times now, we've been carefully working away with CMP now for over 2 years to get this deal in place. People have been asking us, well, if you love Meseta so much, if you think Cumbre is such a great target, why aren't you up there drilling it? Well, we wanted to hold off until we could get in and systematically explore both sides of those targets and understand where to put the best holes. But very, very nice indications of high sulfidation epithermal mineralization at surface on our ground. Very nice indications of large-scale geophysical targets sitting under that at depth in open into Chile. So excellent acquisition for us, and all of the vectors are pointing into that ground from what we can see, particularly for the Meseta target.
That was actually my open question from last time. One of my open questions from last time was, if you like it that much, why aren't you there? But I suppose that's not something we could have told me about last time.
Know. Okay, is that we've been holding off, and now we're ready to go full tilt on what we feel are really high priority targets for us, and are directly on strike for that that giant Miocene system that we see next door.
It is something that I want to talk about as to how do you go, full steam ahead. Just one last thing one thing before that, to the iron ore point that Alan, you also made and said that Stephen could talk about. This map shows jarosite, and jarosite is, as far as I understand, it's an iron sulfate, and it often forms in highly oxidized zones. No, I didn't know that. I had to look it up. I'm not that smart, but they aren't always necessarily mineralized zones, right? So why is this included kind of as a feature on the map? Why does jarosite matter? Is this something new, or am I kind of overthinking it?
Yeah, no, not at all. Jarosite is one of a group of minerals that define an acid sulfate alteration system, and that acid sulfate style of alteration is the kind of alteration that you see with the upper parts of Filo Del Sol system and other large copper gold and gold systems along that Miocene belt. So it's an indicator mineral, it's an alteration mineral, but it's not an economic mineral that you mine or that you would ever mine for iron ore. So it's not a target mineral that CMP would be interested in. And certainly the style of deposits that we're looking at are very unlikely to produce ore grade iron minerals that would be attractive to CMP. So they understand very much that our focus is copper gold, and probably that's paid of knowing the prospectivity of the belt and understanding that their focus is other commodities, particularly iron ore, as Alan's mentioned. They're comfortable for us to go in and explore this ground for copper and gold, which are not primary commodities for them, in a system that they've done enough work on to understand that it's not a target for iron ore in its own right either.
So that's a good explanation, but essentially what you're saying is there's no, like, you don't expect there to be an iron ore deposit that could be economically extracted on this land package.
That's correct.
Okay.
And they don't either, Antonio.
That was a much shorter answer than the one I could have given.
That's why this is non-core for them, because they've not found anything of that level. So it's a copper exploration project now.
Okay, that's fair.
Copper, gold, silver.
That's right.
How does the copper in soil anomaly here correlate with the alteration types? Like, what do you have? Kaolinite and alunite, I believe, is what you have. Are you seeing kind of a spatial overlap, or are these completely unrelated?
Look, the actual nature of the copper anomaly that we'll get in there is to be defined. But what we see is that there is a very large, high order copper in soil anomalies, copper gold in soil anomaly coming in from our project along that big, much northwest oriented Macho Muerto fault zone that we believe will carry on directly into the CMP ground. What we also know from the historic exploration data that CMP have shared with us, they've collected on their ground, is that we have very high order copper and gold stream sediment anomalies draining the alteration system that we can see on our image processing. And that alteration system is the direct extension of the Filo Del Sol alteration. So somewhere in there, there's copper and gold that's in the drainages that comes from that alteration system that we can see on the imagery, but that we haven't been in to sample it with rock chips or soils yet to define it. You asked me, or intimated that you were going to ask me, so I'll jump in ahead here and ask myself, what are we going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
Is look, obviously we have to put all the access agreements in place here with the Chilean communities that own the access points from the Chilean side. But we've already assembled an exploration team of very experienced Andean porphyry and epithermal geologists ready to go in to sample that ground. So early phase will be reconnaissance level mapping and sampling of the confirming that our Worldview 3 satellite alteration processing has accurately mapped the extension of the system. We have a high confidence that that's the case. Once those results are in, which we should be able to get people in the field here in the near future, we'll send in a geophysical team and extend that geophysics that shows those nice open anomalies that we can see on the Argentine side into Chile, and then we'll be drill testing the targets in through there. So there's a little bit of work to do here because, as you pointed out earlier, there's a bit of a void in the data sets there, and that's the attraction to us, is that this has never been explored. But from both the CMP data on the Chilean side and from our soil rock chip data on the Argentine side, we've got geochemistry converging on that point. And that's where the alteration sits. That's where the big structures are converging as well. It bodes well for that to be a mineralized system there that of course, if it's on that Miocene belt, has a good chance of being a very significant system.
So mapping copper and soil, conductivity, chargeability, that's kind of the layers that you're going to use to choose drill targets, essentially.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, the geology plays a big role here as well, Stephen. Right? The system, the type of system that we're in. I think we're seeing something more of the epithermal side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the surface geology that we see on our side, we can see outcropping vuggy silica quartz alunite breccias that are exactly the kind of alteration and host to the Filo del Sol mineralization, or at least the cap to it, in the big system to the north. Our rock chip sampling of those ledges has returned epithermal style numbers in them, up to about 1.5 grams of gold in outcrop, and also quite significant silver and epithermal pathfinders. So the top of the system looks like it's a high sulfidation epithermal in character, but the geophysical signature that we see sitting at depth underneath that has the characteristics of the responses you would expect from a porphyry style target. So we're seeing a big chargeable halo, which could be that pyrite halo to the system, and the start of a conductive core as we come up across to the property boundary that we're looking for to potentially mark that transition to more copper-rich material in the middle. So this is a really exciting target that has both the epithermal and porphyry style characteristics that we see further to the north in Filo. Yeah. So, and as we've said here, open into that ground.
So it's essentially an HSE overprint on top of a porphyry. That's what you're hoping that it is. You never know
Well,
until
that's
you.
certainly that's what we're speculating is going on.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
Yep.
have to turn on the truth machine before you know the rotary truth revealer, if
Don't
you
we?
will.
The big
What
diesel powered lie detector. Yeah.
exactly? What is it? Do you have comparables or examples of places in the world or in this specific belt where or how the exploration happened? Like if it's Filo, what did they do first? Did they use the same targeting techniques? How long did it take him to make the discovery? And do they know that they have that HSE overprint on top of a porphyry?
Well, look, I mean, the best example is the one that I can point to that is, one starting 1 kilometer to the north of us, which is exactly what's happened there. And it's very well documented that you've had that high sulfidation epithermal collapse onto the top of a porphyry system, which is a high sulfidation Filo Del Sol blanket sitting over the top of that beautiful high grade column of mineralization that is Aurora. They can it's right there next door to us. So those patterns and those principles of geology have definitely happened right next door. So there's no geological reason why that process could not have happened in the ground that we have. What we're really looking to see here is that we need that geochemical affirmation and that geophysical affirmation that it's there. But we're seeing that evidence for it on our side of the property, and we fully expect to see that it'll continue into the ground. Our satellite imagery shows that the alteration is continuous. So it's the pieces are there. The process and the time to explore, look, we know that for Philo, it took them years to go from drilling the modest grade Filo del Sol system before they discovered that deep Aurora zone with the plus kilometre and a half intersection. But we have all of that knowledge to leverage from their work, and we're applying all of the tools that we need to be able to directly target those systems from the beginning.
Mm.
So we should be able to be targeting this work, assuming we can get the geophysicists and the field teams in. We'll be targeting this within months to a year, rather than taking many years to be able to figure out where to drill. So we're leveraging a great deal of knowledge from what's been learnt next door. We know that there's a large-scale, productive, world-class copper gold system right next door, and from all of the work that the Philocorp have published, we can see the processes that are at play to make that system extending into our ground.
Hmm. And they've kind of been mm, lucky, might be a tricky word here, but they've been lucky from the perspective that not all HSE systems are mineralized, right? Because the overprinting acidic fluids can sometimes leach to metals, and so they're not all over the world are they mineralized. But to your point as well, the Filo's recent drilling to the south has been rather modest in grade too, right? And what are you thinking? Kind of for are you targeting similar grades to them to the intercept that you've noted in this news release?
If you look at the grades that they've intersected there, they're the kind of grades that they're seeing in the high sulfidation cap to the system. And in fact, the gold grades are quite good. So the thing that really was the step change for Philo was the Aurora discovery and the large high grade enriched grade porphyry system that was sitting at depth underneath that big low grade cap. So what we're hoping to target those, we're looking for those higher grade parts of the system. And that's what we're hoping that geophysical signature represents, is that we have that porphyry sitting underneath it at depth. Of course, we have to drill it to see what's there. Yeah.
What is your expected time frame for the first round of drilling? Again, you said you have some more work to do this season, but what is this something you're thinking about next season, or how is that going to look
Yeah, look, I don't think I can rule out the potential that we'll be drilling there this season. Obviously, most of these things are weather and capital constraint. So we have the funding in place to do this work. We, but theoretically have funding in place to go and drill these holes. But we need to go in and get that work to make sure that that's the place where we want to spend our funding. I think we spoke last time about trying to be very focused and very cautious with spending capital because of the cost of drilling holes at this altitude. So we're not going to rush in and start punching holes into this area until we have confirmed the geochemical and the geophysical signature that we want to see. I think, the thing to remember is that we didn't start drilling until well into February last season, and we still drilled, over 2 kilometers in that season. So, all things being equal here, we have a time window to get the surface work done and potentially some initial drill holes into it. But Alan's going to have to give me the money to do that. So get him back on. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yep.
and that's something we will get to it, but it might be worth talking about how you want to drill it first, though, as in, are you looking to test broad anomalies, or will you focus on specific alteration geochemical zones, just specific zones and very targeted holes?
Well, look, I always try and be very targeted with my drilling, and as we mentioned, particularly with these holes because they're expensive. But if we can repeat the data sets that we have already on the Argentine side and extend them into Chile, we're going to have very clear indications of where to drill. And in part, we can see the the edge of that system in the data sets that we already have. But if we can extend those things into Chile, we'll be able to vector really quite effectively, I think, into the core of the system. But data's for us to go through. One is that we can see open geochemistry on all sides. We can see the alteration projecting in, but we have to go there and confirm that that's real. First step. Now that step's going to happen within the next few weeks to a month, where we'll have the teams. As I've said, we've got a team of gun explorers ready to go that we can deploy in there really quickly, and we'll get fairly quick confirmation, given that we'll have PXRF guns and good experienced people in there, that we're getting the right kind of indications. We're already lining up the geophysical consultants that are on standby and have a window of availability for us. If we get confirmation from that first round, we'll deploy the geophysicists in, and we're anticipating having that information in play for us early enough in the system to be ready to make some decisions on timing
Well,
for potential drilling.
You said if Alan gives you the money, how much money are you asking? How many holes would you like to see going into it to get an adequate response to your?
I was going to say the same thing. This is kind of we've got
two steps of work to do here that we have budget for, which are the geochemistry and the geophysics. We'll deploy those funds as the data warrants, and then we'll design drill holes to test them. No, I can answer that question once we get to that stage.
Yeah, I mean, we've just closed the deal, same day that Filo closed their deal, which fortuitous or luck or coincidence, whatever. But look, we're just super excited. It's great ground. We're gonna go and see what we see. We'll know. It's too early to say. We don't know what we have, right? So
Well, and hopefully I'll get you back on at that point. You call it fortuitous. That's interesting to me, and it makes me think about something else. But you last time when I asked you, you couldn't tell me who your South American mining partner is. I assume you still cannot tell me. But what was their reaction to you wanting to pick up this ground? Did they know in advance? Did you consult? How did that go?
All the specifics about that are covered under confidentiality agreement, so I can't
Okay.
comment, unfortunately. But anyone looking at the map of the district would have seen that this belt runs north south. This is an attractive part of the district. I have it under good information that we were not the only people looking to acquire this ground, but we did. Well, we've not acquired it; we've optioned it, but we're not the only people looking. And I think that any investor that is involved with Mogotes would be very pleased that we've done that. And I think that yeah, we'll see what happens with the exploration, but we're very, very, very pumped. What we've seen from the remote sensing already has been very exciting.
Whether everyone is happy is actually what I was thinking. Why I asked you about the partner, whether they're still on board, is because not a lot of volume happened on the day of the news release in the stock. Not much of a share price move either. But then the day after, there were over 2 million shares that traded, which is over 20 times the volume of the day prior. And there was a small drop in the price. But again, high volume, small drop in the price. I mean, I was just thinking, who's exiting and who's entering? And so, have you who are you talking to, or have you managed to find the sellers? And what do you think about that?
We've been a bit heads down here, focused on the actual work to monitor the share price movements. But what I'll say is that the I think we announced it towards the end of the trading day, so that makes sense why nothing would
Yeah.
have really happened in the first day. And generally, these things take some time. That's what we're doing. We're trying to tell people what is it that we've optioned, why that we think that it's interesting, that it's actually a move that was well considered, thoughtfully put together, a very I would say a creative deal for us in the sense that with a little bit of shares and exploration, the land package substantially improves in terms of prospectivity and helps close off some of our key targets there at Meseta and Cumbre. So yes, I think broadly speaking, the shareholders that I speak to are quite pleased.
Good. Well, thank you for that overview. I think I've gone through most of my questions that I had. There's still I've written down a couple of questions for our next conversation, which are hopefully going to be answered by then. What else? What am I forgetting to ask you that you came here hoping to talk about?
Stephen, anything on your end? Because I'm pretty happy.
No, I think this is really it. We've secured, I think, one of the last really clear, strategically important pieces of ground on in the Vicuña district. Makes us one of the most significant landholders here outside of the Lundin BHP Angex group of companies that really control this belt. I think it makes us a very attractive group to follow here, because we now definitively control the extension of that Miocene belt, and we have really good indications that we have significant exploration targets that will extend into that ground. So this is an exciting step for Mogotes, and a really big, important step for us towards being able to test the best targets on in our ground.
And the story now, I guess, is Stephen and Antonio. We've got running north south NGX, and now as of yesterday or a day before, BHP and Lundin Group, right? Now in charge there, and then us, and it was us just here, but now it's us on both ends. So that, as Stephen said, this is it. Vicuña district, poised to be something very important in the future. So let's see.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to our next conversations as this story is developing. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time today. And thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I appreciate your time. And I do have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they are necessarily a good or a bad company. I am not here to endorse or attack anyone, but simply to ask questions. If you find that I failed in my duties in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I am not an experienced interviewee, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business, and losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. Seriously, this is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles. Too many really to count, but they include company specific factors like geology, financing ability, and really many others, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, all of which makes this space nearly impossible to figure out. Moreover, these companies are typically in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for financing and they don't get any money of their own into the company. So they have to depend on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which often results in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online are intended as marketing, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media, the photos that they share on there, whatever else might be, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and told you about the new hot stock. That's all intended as marketing, and you should understand that. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there's a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, I'm simply here to ask the questions. Many out there will do exactly that because that way they get more money out of the company's pockets. And you should be aware of that inherent bias. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content, yes, including this interview, just approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it or presenting it or whatever it might be is biased because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit disclosed or not. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I don't have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits, so I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. And although this might sound amusing to you, it is definitely not amusing to me, and it is not intended as a joke. I am simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say because you risk losing all of your money. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know what's going to go up, what's going to go down, or what's going to go in circles. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success. And even if they did result in a success, we don't know what that's going to do to the stock price. And given that we're talking about high risk activities here, most of the times it will result in a failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I'm not always going to catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So yes, this show is called the CEO Barbecue in an effort of me being cute, essentially. And even if I did ask a few tough questions, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving particles, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business, obviously, but I'm also not experienced enough to catch all red flags. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers and listeners and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein does not constitute a solicitation of an offer to buy or sell any security or instrument or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all the parties involved in the management of the business and the production of this content from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all legal talk that I'm reading off a piece of paper, but it is important for you to actually stop for a second and understand. This is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should always do your own research. after you've consulted or before you've consulted with a professional licensed investment advisor, which none of us are. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. Setterplus.ca is where you actually do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings. Now, I encourage you to read and analyze the management information circular, the financial statements, the management discussion and analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical document. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money become even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high to begin with, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's best quotes, or one of my favorite Charlie Munger quotes, which I wish I'd listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."